everybody, this is Grandmaster Ben Feingold here at the Chess Club and or Scholastic Center of Atlanta. And it's Wednesday, April 14th. And we're doing a lecture today on this match, Kasparov, Karpov 86, but I want to give you some background. So we'll get to the unfortunate page first, so we can not look at ads for a second. Let's see, what do? I do something. I do this. I do this. Wait, that was the wrong thing. Let's see. Oh, here it is. This is what I do. Sorry. Where is it? It's somewhere. Why don't I see it? I'm the worst. It has to be there. Why isn't it there? Oh, here it is. Okay, good. Yeah. Okay, so I've been teaching chess a long time, and I've been using the internet a long time. And this is the worst thing I've ever seen that mixes chess and the internet. Okay, and I've seen Mr. Belvedere naked, so that's, you know. This is the Wikipedia article on the match. Are they kidding? What? That's it. So I've never been so mad, and I'm always a little mad. It has some good information, but where's the rest of the information? Ridiculous. Okay, so this has actually happened before, and in fact, in the Steinitz-Zukertort match, in the 1800s, they actually played in several cities. And nowadays, it happens sometimes they play in two cities, but it's rare, but it happens. And in fact, my brother Mark went to one of these matches that was in New York and Lyon, France. He went to the New York part. But anyway, the point of my story is this match that we're doing today, the 1986 match, was played in London the first half and then in Leningrad. And I guess the people of Leningrad were unhappy, so they changed the name of their city back to St. Petersburg. That's probably what it was. And then, confusing the audience, they all started playing shuffleboard. Oh wait, that's the other St. Petersburg. Okay, this match took a long time to finish because I think there was a break between the, there probably was like a week or two off to travel and such. And this is one of the 5 matches they played over a period of 6 years. They played 5 World Championship matches. Now, some of you may not be familiar, with everything. The first match was in 84-85. It took over 5 months, and there was no result, which doesn't make any sense. But after 29 games, Karpov was up 5-0, first to win 6 games. Then they played, I think, 19 more games, and Karpov still hadn't won any to win the match, and Kasparov won 3, including 2 in a row, and then the president of FIDE stopped the match. Very suspicious. Doesn't make any sense, but all right. And the thing is, as you all know, except for one thing, none of you know, Fischer wanted to play a similar kind of match that never ends, and he wanted it to be first to win 10 games. All right, and the thing is, if you have a site for a match, you can't just tell the match people who run the site, we might here for 2 weeks, we might be here for 7 months. We don't know. I mean, you can't, So unlimited matches are pretty stupid now because you don't want to have like a 7-month match. That's silly. And first to win 10 games, this match from 1984 would still be going on. All right, so then they changed the format the last few championships where it's a set number of games. In my opinion, and the opinion of about 90% of people I know, they're too short. Matches should be 20, 24 games. They shouldn't be 12 games and 14 games. That's ridiculous. Okay, you want to have more games, but all right. So this match was 24 games. Okay, now this is the third match they played. In 84-85, the match didn't end. Then they played at 85, where Kasparov became the world champion, winning 13 games to 11. He was up 12 to 11, and if Karpov won game 24, he would retain his title from the match that didn't count. But so Kasparov had to draw or win the last game, and he won. So he won 13 to 11. He's the world champion. Now, they don't do this now, and it's very stupid, so it's good they don't do it now, is at that time and in previous times, and this is Botvinnik's favorite rule. Go Botvinnik. There's a picture of Botvinnik right there in our chess center. The rule was, and for many years, many decades, if the world champion loses a match, he's entitled to a rematch. So you have to beat the world champion twice. Now, the rematch doesn't count as a normal match for the guy who's the world champion who just beat the world champion. He doesn't get another rematch. Otherwise, that would be silly. So by those rules, you have to win 2 matches to be world champion. That doesn't make any sense. But that's the way the rules were forever. They got rid of that. So in 85, when Kasparov won the second match against Karpov 13 to 11, which was the first match that had a result, this is the rematch. So if Karpov wins this match, he's the world champion again, and there's no rematch, which doesn't make any sense. You got to be Karpov has to win 1 match out of 1,000. Okay. Anyway, as you can see from the screen, Kasparov won the match 12.5, 11.5. And there was this big run in the middle for Karpov. He won 3 games in a row when he was getting crushed. And so then he wasn't getting crushed anymore. Okay. However, the one advantage Kasparov had this match over the other 2 matches is since he's the reigning world champion, he wins on a tie. So Kasparov already won the match with a game to go, and you may be asking, why did they play the last game? And I actually know the answer because I was watching these matches. They played the last game for prize money purposes. If Karpov won the last game, Kasparov would have retained the title, but they would split the prize money. That's actually a lot of money. So Kasparov got a lot of money for drawing that last game as opposed to losing. Instead of splitting the money, he got like probably 2/3 or something. And you can see on the right side of the screen, Kasparov was 23. By the way, Kasparov's birthday was yesterday. So, he turned 58 yesterday. Is that right? 58? Yeah. And Karpov was 35, which, 50, 60, 70 years ago was young. Now, world champion playing a match at 35 is suspicious. Okay. And you can see the results here game by game. There were 3 or 4 famous games from this match, but I can't analyze them all because it's a 45-minute to 1-hour lecture. If it was like a 6-hour lecture, I could show you all the games. Okay, now let's go to the other screen, and we can, if I figure out how to do it, which I won't. Okay, that's everything's wrong. Everything I do is wrong. Meeting controls. Why can't I do anything? Oh, that's why, because I'm stupid. Okay. New share, and then share. All right. And then get rid of this, I guess. Yeah. Okay, so Karpov, Kasparov, they wrote, the Wikipedia article, as you saw, is terrible. ChessGames.com has a better article, including a picture from the event, and the opening move of the first game, they always have a celebrity, was the Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher. Pretty good celebrity for London. And actually, as an aside, Rex Singfield, the chess benefactor in St. Louis, who you've all heard of, I hope, he's actually met Margaret Thatcher and talked to her and got some stuff to say also. Okay, so somehow she's involved in chess. And here's like the rules and all that kind of stuff. There's all kinds of rules. The 100th anniversary of Zukertort Steinitz, 1886. And what's funny about that is Zukertort and Steinitz played one of their matches, maybe that one. They played some of it in St. Louis. And there's actually a plaque that says they played, where they played. Okay, so they had different arbiters depending on what city they were in, because they were, Now, they were going to strip Kasparov of the title because Campomanes, who was the president of FIDE, who stopped the first match, he wanted this match to take place 3 months after the last match, which is insane, by the way. If only you knew how insane that was. Hopefully one of you knows. And Kasparov's like, frankly, ridiculous. Okay? And then the Soviet Chess Federation, with Kasparov and Karpov together, they agreed to play later. They flew to the FIDE headquarters, and they all agreed to not play 3 months after the other match because that's stupid. Okay. And they played 2 more matches after this match. And then after the 5th match, Karpov was done until Kasparov and Short did their own thing. And then FIDE later said Karpov was world champion again, which is contested, but that's another lecture. I could lecture, that's several lectures, what happened in the chess world. It was like boxing. There was like 500 world champions. Okay, so let me do the screen share, and then we can actually look at the games. I'm sorry, there's no time to look at the games, so I'll see you guys tomorrow. Is this the game? Yeah, C92. Okay. Perfect. If this is the C92 game, let me see. Yep. Okay. So this is the most famous game from the match. It's game 16. And Kasparov was white, and they played a line that they play often in their matches, the Zaitsev variation of the Ruy-Lopez. Coincidentally, Zaitsev was one of Karpov's seconds, so that seems fair. So nowadays, everybody's playing the Berlin with knight f6, but that happened much later in the Kasparov-Kramnik match. So that wasn't popular at this time. And the only 2 grandmasters who played the Berlin with black all the time were Arthur Bisgeier and Alex Scherzer, 2 American grandmasters. They always played the Berlin, but nobody else did. So after Kramnik had no trouble against Kasparov, then it became the most popular way to play, because trading queens against Kasparov is probably a good idea. Okay, so they played the normal Ruy-Lopez, and they got to this very important position. Karpov doesn't play the Marshall Gambit. If you want to play the Marshall Gambit, you castle, and then you play d5 if allowed. Karpov never does that. It's very common now. Okay. Now this position, h3, this position is at least 10,000 Grandmaster games, at least. And basically every move is theory. And Karpov, at this time, liked to play the Zaitsev variation. And I was in Moscow in 1984 before the first match, and they told me for the first match, grandmasters were divided as to who the favorite was. They thought it was 50-50. Now, of course, by this time, Kasparov's the favorite because he's the world champion. He won the second match. Now, the Zaitsev variation, as you all know, except for one thing, is an improvement over the Smyslov variation, played by Smyslov, which was popular in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And I'll show you what the difference is. He played bishop b7, and then he played rook e8. Now, the point of bishop b7 and rook e8 is to put pressure on this e4 pawn. And before the Zaitsev was popular, people were afraid of knight g5. Now they're not afraid of knight g5, so they play the Zaitsev. Before that, people would play the move h6. Okay, pawn h6. Then they would play rook e8, bishop f8. So it was a Zaitsev, but you're playing h6 first. Now, unfortunately, that's not as good as the Zaitsev. And the reason is, the purpose of this opening for black is to stop white from playing this typical maneuver with his knight. You got to stop the white knight. And h6 loses a tempo, so it doesn't stop it. But the Zaitsev does. So after rook e8, knight bd2, you play bishop f8. Always play bishop f8. And now, if white plays knight f1, his pawn on e4 isn't defended enough, So you could take this, and this pawn is not defended. But if black plays h6 and then plays bishop f8, white's knight can get to g3. So the Zaitsev is an improvement over the Smyslov, and people originally thought knight g5 was good, and then they didn't. And if you look in a chess database, unfortunately, you will see many dozens of games that go knight g5, rook f8, knight g5, rook e8, etc., and they agree to a draw. Okay, unfortunately. Not now, but 20 years ago, 30 years ago, a lot of games like that. That's called the grandmasters have all these prearranged ways of drawing quickly. Now, there's a funny story. There's a Dutch grandmaster you've never heard of named John van der Wiel. Not a bad bridge player, by the way. Probably about 2,000 in chess strength in bridge. And he played Karpov, and this is how the game went. And van der Wiel didn't want to draw. He has the white pieces. He'll try to win. And he knew he could repeat as many times as possible, and Karpov would never claim a draw because he's Karpov, and he's playing van der Wiel. So he thinks van der Wiel is going to claim a draw, and van der Wiel told me they repeated a million times. He just did that so he wouldn't get in time trouble. And once they got to move 25 or so, then van der Wiel just played another move. And then van der Wiel told me he was very lucky to draw. He almost lost, but that's another story. Now, since that game, which is over 30 years ago, they've changed the FIDE rules. If there's a 5-time repetition, the arbiter steps in and the game is a draw. That wasn't the rule then. The rule for repetitions was somebody has to claim it. But now the arbiter can say, okay, 5 times, get out of here. All right. Now, obviously, Kasparov in a world championship match doesn't want to draw with white. Ridiculous. So, I have to go back because I'm cheating. Okay. So after knight bd2, bishop f8, you can't play knight f1 because this pawn's not defended sufficiently. So he plays a4, you got to play another way. Okay. And they've had many, many games in this variation for many, many moves. I mean, they're going to move 20, 25, and they've still analyzed it with their team. Okay, so he plays h6 now, stopping knight g5 forever because white still can't play knight f1. Okay, after bishop c2, he could play knight f1 later because he defended his pawn, but he has to watch out for, takes and knight b4, which is what happened. Takes. Excuse me. Okay, back to what I was saying. So after knight b4, you're putting tremendous pressure on the e-pawn. That's the point of the Zaitsev. And because you unleash the bishop, and you're attacking the bishop on c2. Even if you weren't going to win the e-pawn, you don't want to lose the bishop pair, especially the white-squared bishop, the Spanish bishop. So, I mean, white has to play bishop b1. It saves his bishop, it defends the e-pawn, etc., mainly etc. Now, white can't do his maneuver that he likes to do because there's too much pressure on the pawn, but after c5, gaining a lot of space, white plays d5, which blocks the bishop, so now we can play knight f1 to g3. Okay, knight d7, typical Benoni kind of move, and this looks like black has a good Benoni here with that structure, except the bishop's not fianchettoed. But yeah, the knight on b4 can't be kicked by a3, and black can play either knight e5 later or c4 and knight c5 and control a lot of squares. So black has a lot of play for white's dominating center and for the bishop on b7 being a bit suspicious. Okay, so rook a3. This happens in the Benoni and the Ruy Lopez. Kasparov wants to either double up on the bubble up or get his rook to the king side and start attacking. And not only is it a good idea, there is no other idea because all these pieces are here blocking the rook. We're not going to get the rook out by normal means, but this other way works great. Okay, so c4, the knight can go to c5, controlling b3 and d3 and so forth. Knight d4, c4 gave away the d4 square. And that's something a lot of club players don't think about. when they're doing something which is good in this case, c4, knight c5, they don't realize they're giving away some squares because they're thinking about what they're doing. Obviously, Karpov realizes he's giving away knight d4, but okay, queen f6 attacks the knight, knight f3 defends the knight, and knight c5. So it looks like black should be pretty happy because he has a pawn here, the two knights here, his rook's on a half open file, his queen's doing something. So black is okay. A, knight takes b5. White figures if black has all this play, I might as well take a pawn. Makes sense to me. Rook takes a3, knight takes a3, threatening the c pawn. Bishop a6, defending the c pawn, and getting off this block diagonal. Okay. Defending d3 some more too in case knight d3 comes. Rook e3, he lifts the other rook. Rook b8. So he wants to get on this open file instead of this half open file, the other half open file. e5, white has an extra pawn, doesn't want to wait for black to get all that counterplay, so he gets his own play. Knight to d3, and knight g4. Now, white wants to attack on the king side, which is typical in the Spanish, and he has a lot of pieces ready to attack on the king side, and black has a lot of pieces on the queen side. So if we trade pieces, that's not good for white attacking. Okay, so knight g4 attacks the queen goes to b6, rook goes to g3, white's trying to attack, g6. It's funny, this pawn's not sufficiently defended because the g pawn's pinned. So if it was white's move, he could take on h6, and the queen can't take because there's two white pieces on it. And g6 also doesn't defend the pawn sufficiently, so white takes it, but now the b2 pawn is hanging. That c4 pawn's no joke. So he takes the b2 pawn. That seems like a good trade for black. This useless pawn against this very useful pawn. The knight's attacked, the c pawn's coming, the queen is active. Okay. Queen f3. Kasparov's going all in for the attack. Knight d7. Now, this knight's attacked, and it's hanging, and it's trapped, but you got to be pretty careful here because you can get mated pretty easily since white has all these pieces on black's king, and black only has the bishop. Now, I say black only has the bishop. Queen's also defending, but it's not defending if you take this. So he played knight d7. Now his knight is defending f6 and f8, and it unleashes the bishop on the a3 knight, and so forth. Bishop f8, king f8, king h2. Kasparov tucks his king away, which is a very unusual move when you're trying to mate somebody, so there's never a back rank check. That's the safest king ever. Rook b3, very aggressive looking move. Unfortunately, it doesn't work, but I mean, that's because Karpov was in very bad time trouble. In these matches, the World Championship matches, often the games are decided between moves 30 and 40 when both players are in time trouble. And that's what's happening here. Bishop takes d3, pawn takes, that pawn's getting close to queening. Queen f4, the queen's coming to attack, d6, h6. Black finally wins the free piece. Knight h6, threatening mate. Queen e7, defending mate. And rook takes g6, threatening mate again. Threatening rook g8 mate. So black has a tough time here because white has all of his pieces attacking the black king, and black's rook on b3 and black's bishop on a6. They're not very helpful. Okay, got to stop mate. Queen e5. Now, when you sacrifice material and you have an attack and the attack works, if you guys are playing, you're like, yes. If the attack doesn't work, you're like, aw, okay. And at the very highest levels, and Kasparov is the highest level, it's not like that. Kasparov doesn't sacrifice material, and then if he mates you, goes, yes. And if he doesn't mate you, goes, aw. He calculates, 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 calculates. If he's not winning, he doesn't sacrifice material. So he's not guessing, he's calculating forever. Now, some of you are probably thinking, well, queen f7's mate, but it's illegal. So queen's pinned, so you can't play queen f7 mate. So it looks like without calculating, black's winning. If you don't calculate, because black's up a piece, black's d pawn's going to queen, and black just forced the trade of queens. How can white checkmate black? The queens are off the board. Okay, but obviously Kasparov has calculated the win, and Karpov's in time trouble. So, okay, check, only legal move. And then d6 check. This is a brilliant move that's very easy to miss. And probably when Karpov played queen e5, he missed it. King takes allows knight f7 check, winning the queen. So you can't do that. He played king e6. If he plays queen takes d6, which also keeps the queen pinned, we have rook e8 winning the queen, just like in the game. So he played king e6, rook check wins the queen, king d5 wins the queen. And material isn't so terrible for black. He has a rook and a bishop for a queen, and he's got a pass pawn on the 6th rank. But unfortunately, that pawn doesn't promote, and white has all kinds of stuff going on. d7, threatening the queen. He defended it. If he plays the sort of obvious knight d7, then queen f7 will skewer the king and rook. So that's not good. So he has to play rook b8, knight f7, threatening the knight on e5. And here black resigned because I'm threatening knight takes knight, queen takes, queen, and the obvious move, knight takes, runs into queen takes rook. And a bishop and knight can't fight against the queen and 3 pawns. It's not enough. So resigns. So a brilliantly executed attack from Kasparov. Karpov could have defended better, but he was in terrible time trouble. And most of the games in world championships, not just this one, that are decided decisively, they're not draws, usually it's because of time trouble between moves 30 and 40. This is why a lot of people like to watch Rapid, because there's a lot of mistakes. And the purists like to see slow chess because they want to see perfection. And okay, when the players are in time trouble, that's end of perfection. Okay, so let's look at the last game. The second game, and I apologize to Karpov. You lost the match, so, sorry. We're going to be looking at Kasparov wins. All right, and obviously, we could analyze all the decisive games if we were making a 6-hour video, but, we're not. Let me figure out what I'm supposed to do. What am I supposed to do? Okay, new share. My mom told me never to share, so I don't know. I guess this is right. Yeah, that looks right. Okay, always share. All right, and then I'm going to make sure it's right. Kasparov's white and plays d4. Let me triple check that it's correct. Always triple check. d4. Okay, I did everything right. Okay. Now, the last game, you may remember, I hope, Kasparov played, he played the move d4, and he played the move e4. In this game, he played the move d4. And a lot of people at the club level, they learn an opening and they play that opening. So somebody who's like 1600 normally doesn't say like, should I play knight f3 on move 1, e4, d4, c4? What am I in the mood for? What's my opponent the worst at against those moves? Most people are just like, I play this with white and I play this with black. And most of the super grandmasters play everything. And especially Ivanchuk. He plays everything. And in a world championship match, it's good if your opponent doesn't know what you're going to do on move 1. That makes it harder for them to prepare against you, since they have months to prepare with engines and seconds and so forth. And often, even at the grandmaster level, people are better with one move over the other. So if there are grandmasters who play e4 and d4, typically they're just better at one of them. You just look at their stats, and the guy's better with d4 than e4, or vice versa. And with the top players in the world, that shouldn't be true. Kasparov should be equally good with both. Karpov, earlier in his career, was playing e4 more than d4. And then he sort of switched to d4 as he got older. Okay, so they played by transposition a queen's gambit declined. Okay, and so Beth Harmon was watching with interest. Bishop g5. And this line, I started playing with white mainly because of these games from the match. I watched Kasparov get what I thought were slight advantages and hard to play for black, and I wanted to have white. And in this position, if you play bishop h4, you have to know the Tartakower and you have to know the Lasker variation. So if you play this, you're steering the game into the waters that you want. You don't have to learn all these variations. Okay, and here white can play queen b3, queen c2, queen d2, rook c1, bishop d3, and black has to know all of them. Rook c1 is the most common move, and I usually play queen d2 here, mainly because of these matches. Karpov was playing queen d2 sometimes, and rook c1 is the most common move, and I've had white in this variation also. Takes, and e5. And when black has this pawn triangle, which you see a lot, black wants to play c5 or e5 at some point. Otherwise, this bishop's going to be pretty mad on c8. So he plays for e5 because his bishop's on f6, so that supports e5. Okay. h3, later in the game, that stops bishop g4, pinning the knight, and king h2 later avoids back rank mates. So h3 is a very logical move. Takes. You want to have the isolated pawn position if you want good winning chances. If you take with a knight, you're giving away these squares to the black knight, and it's sort of more boring. This is more interesting because we can fight for the e file, we can fight for e5, maybe white will play d5 later, and we stop this. So this is fine. Knight b6 attacks the bishop, and this is all their prep. This is all the main line. Bishop to b3. Bishop has to go to f5. It can't go to g4. It doesn't want to go to e6 and mess up the pawn structure. f5 is a great square. And rook e1. Chess is very simple. You develop all your pieces and castle, and once you've done that, now you put your rooks on the open and half open file. White is a tiny bit better because white's rooks are more active than black's, and this bishop is really annoying. This bishop is less annoying. Now, of course, Karpov's a great defender, so he's going to equalize and draw most of the time, but when I play this and my opponents are lower rated, they don't defend as well as Karpov. So I like having white in these positions. Karpov tries to get counterplay on the queen side, a3 so the bishop can drop back if necessary, challenges the file. Queen d2, he wants to play rook e1 and take over the file again, wants to play queen f4, okay? Knight goes back to d7. It's not really doing much on b6. Queen f4, bishop saves itself. h4, Kasparov likes to attack. Queen d8, knight a4. That's not a move I would have thought of if I was white, but he wants to put pressure on both sides of the board. H4, knight A4, Karpov doesn't know what the next move is for white, what he has to defend against. Plays H5, stopping white from attacking forever, but giving away the G5 square, a little risky. Rook E1, B5, Karpov tries to get counterplay. Queen B8, Karpov really wants to trade queens. If the queens are traded, black has two bishops and white has an isolated pawn. But if the queens are on the board, white always has attacking chances. Knight here, bishop here, the queen, the rook, the knight, and these pieces are over here. So doesn't want to trade queens. And Karpov gets his counterplay. And he gives up the two bishops as a consequence, but the pawn structure is pretty similar. They both have the same pieces, but white's obviously better. These pieces are better than these pieces, and this bishop is better than this bishop. That bishop's defending f7, that one's attacking f7. Okay, knight d5, he's like, no, I don't like your bishop. And he trades, and he has a beautiful knight that can go to e5 or g5, and black's bishop can't really do anything of note. Knight e5, queen d8. He's like, you can trade if you want. Even though my pawn structure looks compromised, my king is super safe on h7. So he doesn't do that. He puts pressure on d5 and f7. Karpov's defending. White's attacking. But there's so few pieces on the board. Looks like it should be a draw. But here comes Kasparov trying to infiltrate. And he does. Queen g3. And it looks boring, but black really can't do anything. And white has attacking chances. Rook a8 attacking the pawn. Takes the pawn. Black gets activity. Rook c1. And if he doesn't play rook b7, queen b1, and black's the one attacking. So rook b7 defends the square on b1. Rook c2 attacking the f pawn. Never play f3. This was before my rules existed, 86. Kasparov didn't know never play f3. Rook d2 attacking the d pawn. Karpov's getting counterplay. And knight d7. Finally, the big offensive. Takes. Knight check. King h6. Now, I don't want to play king h6, and I don't want to move my king back. I got to do one of them. If I move my king back, rook b8 looks really annoying. So I have to play king h6. Okay, so queen g5 is almost mate, but there's a queen on f5. Getting close to mate. Rook b4. This stops black from trading queens with queen f4. If queen f4, I just take the queen, and the rook defends through x-ray. Take. So you can't trade queens. But, he plays the move rook c4, and he's like, well, material's equal. You're not mating me. We both have a passed pawn. What's the problem? Takes. And this is really ingenious. Kasparov was a real chess genius. Obviously, this would be mate if the queen wasn't here. This would be mate if the queen wasn't there. But there's three other squares that are mate. So he plays queen d6, threatening queen d2 with mate. Black has to block with the queen. So we got to stop queen d2. So he does, and makes a queen while he's at it. Queen d4. Now his queen has three available squares that are good. This pawn stops this one. This queen stops this one. Who's stopping queen e3 with mate to come? It's amazing in an end game where black has the more advanced pawn. They both have passed pawns. There's checkmate. I mean, queen e3, anything on that diagonal is going to be checkmate. And here, he had to resign. How are you going to stop queen e3? Well, you could play queen e6. Well, no, you can't play queen e6. I forgot the knight gets taken. I was going to play here mate. So you can't play queen e6. How can we defend queen e3? I only see one way. Queen d3. And then this is mate. I don't see another way. Well, the only way to stop getting checkmated here is resigning, and he resigned. So Kasparov was a really amazing player because even in positions that looked safe, he would whip up an attack. And if he had an advantage, he would press, press, and press until you collapsed. And for a human, defending every move for a long time and then getting in time trouble is a difficult task against a great player like Kasparov. This game basically settled the match because earlier in the match, Kasparov was up 4-1, and amazingly, Karpov won 3 games in a row to make it 4-4. So with 3 games to go, 22, 23, 24, Karpov needed to win one of them to become world champion because the match rule said if the match is a tie, 12-12, then Kasparov's the world champion. So after winning this game, Kasparov has a 1-point lead with 2 games to go. The only way Karpov is going to become world champion is to win games 23 and 24. That's really unlikely. So this game basically sealed the deal. The next game was a draw, which means that Kasparov is the world champion, but they still played game 24 because if Karpov wins game 24, the match is a tie and they split the prize money. Prize money's a lot, but he wasn't able to win 24, so Kasparov did win the match. A great match, lots of great games. I'm sorry I could only show you 2 of them. The truth hurts, but if we ever have like a 12-hour lecture, I can really show you lots of stuff. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you guys on Zoom enjoyed it live. This is Grandmaster Ben Feingold. Please like and subscribe and watch for more videos on this channel, on my channel, Ben Feingold. This is the Chess Center channel. Please watch Karen and me on Twitch, on our channels there. I'll see you guys next time, and I hope you enjoyed that lecture as much as I did. I'm sure Kasparov enjoyed it. All right, bye everybody.